Welcome, welcome to another Energy Geek Speak with me, Christine Marguerite and Love Evolve Energy on the group channel Evolve Within Love. Yes, it's a very special conversation, a continuation of a conversation that we are having today with me and a dear friend. So we will be talking about the elemental realms, and if you don't know what those are, stay tuned. Stories of the elemental realms and our first person experiences within these. So my friend is rachelanneenergy, Rachel Scheffler of rachelanneenergy. Please check out her links below, and also please check out on my website, I have links below for yet another upcoming group session, New Moon Revivification. Just a couple of days before the new moon on March 7th, and this is a small group, 6-person group energy session. So we'll be looking at creativity and expression and how you do what you do, moving from the old archetypes of wounded genius, oh, the great starving artist, moving into divine creatrix. It's going to be amazing. The last session was great. March 7th, 21. Please join us. Please join us. So let's move into the conversation. It's a continuation of a conversation Rachel and I spoke about dragon and Elohim energy in our last session. We continued with some more stories. So please sit back, relax. I really sincerely hope you enjoy our conversation. Please comment below, and please subscribe to our channel. We're trying to go live. So thank you so much, Rachel. Let's talk about fairy, elf, gnome, elemental, whether it's an undine or sylph experiences. So you mentioned your experiences with an elf in your mother's yard, and how it came closer and closer, and there was a building of trust. So if you could repeat again what the whole the schism in the 1100s and how that was broken, and the continual repair of the relationship. And then I want to hear play by play, blow by blow, your experience of this elf. Okay.
So I spend a lot of time at my parents' house. They're older and just need help from time to time, and actually my parents are still married after more than 46 years of marriage, and I love my parents. They get along great. We get along great. So it's not like some folks where they just don't get together and stuff. So
yeah,
relaxing in the backyard and being aware of presences, all of a sudden that you're not alone, that there is a consciousness present. And so I just kind of wait, I'm waiting. It's late afternoon, I don't know, 5 o'clock. And I believe it was the summer. And I'm just waiting for this consciousness to kind of make itself known. I'm like, is this earthbound? Is this like past human? Like, what is this? And I noticed that it wasn't coming any closer. I was near the back door, and this presence was like off in the corner, like the furthest corner of the yard. And I'm like, that's interesting that this consciousness feels like it can't come any closer to me and let me get a read of it as much as it wants to read of me. And so I was like, so like, is it scared? Like, is it nervous? Like, what's going on here? And it just didn't feel like earthbound to me. Like elemental energies, they have this, the quality is somewhat like when you have an appendage that falls asleep and then it wakes up again, the circulation starts to circulate and you get the like sparkly fuzzy sensation. a lot of elemental interactions seem to have that kind of quality for me as far as the energy signature. So I'm like, okay, so it's definitely not earthbound. What is this? It's not a gnome, because gnomes, my experiences with gnomes, they're very friendly, very, very down home kind of folksy, beautiful little beings. Like this, like feels sly, feels like really super intelligent. Like, what is this? It's not a dragon. And you know, he was just as much taking the measure of me as I was trying to take the you know, and at this time I had been open to my abilities for maybe 2 years. I'm like, oh my God, is there more? I thought dragons was a lot. Is there more? And so he's like, well, my name is Gentian. I'm like, it's like, is that like a human name? Like, what is that, Chinese? What is that? He goes, I'm an elf. Like, why didn't you know that? Like, he's like, are you stupid or something? Sorry, it's my first elf. And he's like, my name is Gentian. And I was like, oh, well, I'm very happy to meet you. My name is Rachel. And he's like, yeah, you're human. You know, almost like that wasn't supposed to be allowed. Like, he's like, yeah, you're human.
Uh-huh.
And so I mean, this is all the way back at the back of the backyard. And he's not coming any closer. And I just feel all this suspicion. And I've never done anything to this. I'm like the nicest new medium, you know.
Right.
Never done anything to you. And there's just all this like, oh, he's like, oh, I'm just waiting for it. I'm waiting for her to do something really just awful. I'm just waiting for her to like insult me. I'm just waiting for it, you know, because humans are disgusting and can just kind of feel all this. Like, I was like, wow, I don't know who done you wrong, but they really done you wrong. And I went on the internet. He didn't say another word to me at that time. I was like, okay, so elves are real. And I went on the internet looking in some of the shaman groups that I was in and some of the other witchy groups and like, do y'all know anything about elves? Like, what's the story with elves? They seem real mad.
They seem real mad.
They're like really mad. Is this like a fairy thing where I was supposed to make an offering? Like, what's going on?
Right.
And I did end up finding, I think it was just one article where it was very Lord of the Rings. Like, we had been allies, the humans and the elves had been allies, and something happened and nobody seems to know exactly what it was. And that's why it sounds like it was on both sides. Like, there were betrayals on both sides of this alliance that had been formed. And, you know, just deep wounding from both sides. Like, well, you did, you know, and so like the trust was completely destroyed.
Yeah.
Lots of fighting, lots of deaths on both sides. And I gather they were corporeal at that time and have since made the jump like dragons did, you know, and evolved to be vibrational or energetic rather than physical incarnation.
So when you had that first experience, did you experience it with your 3D eyes or your 4D eyes?
It
or
was
both?
40 eyes.
Okay.
And to me, his representation looked very stereotypical. Like, he had the elongated points on his ears and the long straight hair, but he was very short, not very short, but like, if I had been standing with him, I would say that he would have come up to about my breastbone.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So shorter than humans, but not dwarf-like, you know, with the stunted limbs and things. He was perfectly proportional, just not as tall.
Yeah.
And so that's all I really found. I can't find any articles that actually, where someone actually knows what the fighting was about and how it all came to pass. But there was just awful wounding and betrayal, and the trust was broken. And the author seemed to think that in recent times, like over the last 100 years or so, there have been gestures on both sides trying to make amends. And so that kind of fit in with my interaction, where he was at least willing to speak to me but still kind of waiting for another shoe to drop, waiting for me to ruin it all or something like that. And then I would just continue to see him every once in a while, or I would have an awareness that he was there watching when I was over at my parents' house, and he was just watching to see what kind of person I was. Like, does she kick puppies? Like, does she torture animals? What kind of person is she? And it just, the trust built and built and built until he was sending other elves to check me out. He was like, you should go have a look at the human. You should go have a look at the human. And so this one named Givry, he came into the house while I was on the computer. And at that time, this was last fall, because I was channeling for the dragon class. And he's like, well, what about elves? Are you going to do a class about elves?
Huh.
I was like, you guys want to help me channel a class on elves? Because nobody has any information about you.
So bring it, guys.
So
bring
you
it.
have to help a sister out if y'all want your story told. I'm just saying, I can't do it all.
Yeah.
So that's where it's at. They asked for a class, and I'm like, well, y'all got to give me something to go on, because I got no information other than y'all were real pissed at us and we were real pissed at you. I don't know. That's where it's at.
That's where it's at.
Just waiting for them to decide whether they want to trust me enough to channel or not.
Are you open to it?
Yeah.
Do you trust them?
I trust these two.
Oh.
I trust these two, because there was another one that came to have a look at me, and he was not, you could tell he was not like
kind?
The best representation of the species is what I'm gonna say. Like a little dim-witted, very brutish, very like overly physical, kind of that dumb animal, that kind of just
Yeah.
He did not strike me as trustworthy. And I asked him why he was there, if he had a message from Genshin or anything like that, and he's like, no, I'm really not even supposed to be here. I was like, cool, so is he going to be angry at me or you? Like, how is this going to go down? He's like, they just told me that I could have safe passage across your land. And I was like, oh, you've been like banished or something, haven't you? And he didn't correct me. He just walked out.
He just walked out.
He just walked out. I was like, so I think it's every bit as sophisticated and complicated a civilization as our own is. That's what I think.
That has an energetic overlay upon our world.
Yeah. That's
with its own societies,
yeah,
and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, its own, like historical wounding and ancestry, and every bit as complicated as ours is. I think theirs is too. So,
do you have a sense of an overlap? Where does our world, if you want to call it that, in their world, as distinct from ours, what are the overlaps? Are there overlaps where both exist at the same time?
I think it has to, because if I was not seeing him as a physical being, like if I was picking up on him as I would another consciousness, 4D, 5D, and on up, like how does that work? Are they able to just, slip into dimensionality? Are they, do they have like actual cities somewhere? Is it an alternate reality? Is it an alternate universe? Like what is that arrangement? What is the arrangement? Because there's got to be something for them to be able to walk into, suburbia, USA.
Yeah.
And talk to the chick sitting next to the barbecue. There has to be something, whether it's an alternate reality, multiverse, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Where there overlaps. Yeah.
Yeah. Like as much as Genshin has come to trust me, I still don't have details.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to your experiences in the spring and summer when you guys can
Interesting.
talk more.
Yeah.
I would love to listen or read some of those
Interesting
insights.
stuff.
Is there,
Sure.
what do you, do fairies have a link to elves, the fairy realm, the fae, and
I don't
the
know.
elven?
That would be amazing to find out. They've never mentioned them to me, but
Okay.
fairies don't ever really, we don't really have like conversations as such. They're usually short and pithy and fun.
Mm-hmm.
But we, you know, haven't really talked to them much. As far as, you know, do y'all get together and hang out? Like what's going on in the elemental
Right.
world? Do you see the elves? Do they see you? Do you hang out with the gnomes? Do the gnomes know where you are? How do you
Right.
guys interact with each other, if you interact with each other at all?
Yes.
So I don't know. I think there's lots of opportunity to explore what's
Yes.
going on in
Questions.
the elemental realms.
Mm-hmm. I don't know how that would benefit us, but I'm
Super
intrigued.
interesting.
It is super interesting. I've experienced lots of fairies. I don't know that I've ever experienced an elf. Having lived in Colorado, there's a lot of elemental energy around, huge, mungus, and minute.
Mm-hmm.
From the river sylphs to the mountains have a consciousness presence.
Yeah.
What I found is that in my house, the house I was living in, it was a duplex actually, and it had so many windows. And so it was like a tree house, and it very much felt like the outside was in,
Mm-hmm.
at least visually.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know that that really had anything to do with it, but I really felt the fae. And some of that, I believe, is just my nature and my energy has more of a resonance with that, that feeling.
For sure.
And so they kind of set up home in my home.
Yeah.
And I would find them in my couch. Now, when I say I would find them, it wasn't like I could pick it up with my physical hand and say, oh, you lost a wing, right? It wasn't like that. But it felt very connected to the realms of delight and the realms of bliss. Not that there was not also sorrow. There was one time when, you know, and a lot of it, in terms of communication, was claircognizant for me. And I don't always, when I get claircog things, I check it in my other clairs. You know, could I also get a word? Could I also get a visual? Could I also, but what had happened, well, what would happen is that if I was in that, it would snowball. So if I was in a little bit of a delightful mood, I would plop on this futon-y, pillowed, couchy thing, and that would attract them. And then I would have a response to that. And then they would have a response to my response until it was suddenly just like bubbles everywhere.
That's
and
awesome.
So that's my experience of fairies and the fae.
I love that. Beautiful.
I do too. I felt kind of safely held. It felt nurturing and delightful. And I know that on the level of soul, the name of my soul is delight. And so I think that they probably have a sense. Anyway, there was of that truth for me. And so there was a resonance. I never felt any trickery from fairies or deception, or I believe that people have had that experience because they say they have. I personally have not felt that. Perhaps timid, and a little bit of like gentle delicacy, and it is maybe true in my experience. there was this one time when something felt a little, what? And what I understood, what I got clear cognizantly, and then it turned into a few pictures and a few words, is that one of their elders had died, had passed on. And I didn't know that was true. Didn't know that was true for the Fae, but I had no reason not to accept that as their truth. And there was this sort of a ritual rite of passage, honoring whatever that process is, when one would pass on from incarnation in a Fae realm experience. And so I felt that kind of, and there was something about being rebirthed as well. And so there was some kind of balance between a leaving and a coming. So as I'm telling it, I'm remembering these little bits and pieces, or perhaps they're like reinforming me and helping me remember. I don't know. I didn't realize that could be true.
Yeah. I mean, who thinks about the ins and outs of their culture and their life? Yeah, there's life cycle. Like, do they have a life cycle? And what is that? And
and what is that? And I didn't, just part of it, I just didn't poke around into it. I didn't take a great interest, but they didn't seem too upset that I didn't take a great interest, or didn't want to know more, or that my curiosity was not greater. And it's always the level of my willingness to open to a particular vibration is an invitation to call them forward. And there seems to be a more willingness amongst the Fae, just by nature of it. And it's not that they, from my experience, and perhaps you can corroborate with the Fae, that it's, I kind of want to say delicate. In a sense, that is far from true. It's the nature of their hardiness or their strength just feels very different. There's a huge giggle fit has so much strength and vibrancy in it. And so if their strength feels like that, as opposed to, moving a boulder or something like that.
Sure.
So that's my offering around that.
Yeah, I think the fairies are very much that. Wasn't it Khalil Gibran, that poem about the wind longs to play with your hair? And I can't remember the exact. Do you know the poem that I'm talking about?
I do.
The earth delights to be under your feet, or whatever it is.
Yes.
I feel like that is very much about what the Fae are and how they operate. As delighting in the earth, delighting in their lives. Every bit as much as they are there to caretake the soul of those plants and that earth, and the spirit of the land. I feel like they're all about delight, and that the trickery and things like that are only when driven to that sort of behavior by how they are being treated and what they're finding.
Yes, response, reaction.
Yeah, because so my brother and sister-in-law had an issue with the Fae. They weren't being destructive. They weren't being evil or angry or anything like that, but they were causing paranormal activity around the house. Like, you'd be looking at the TV remote sitting on the table and it would just flip off the table by itself. So they're describing these things to me, and I'm like, think about that as a child. That's hilarious. Think about it. That's hysterical.
Yes.
Or you went to put your feet up on the little cushion and it scooted back. That's hysterical. Think about it as you would your 3-year-old. How would Landry look at that? Like, that's fucking funny. And I said, I think maybe they feel ignored by you and they want to play, and they think you're too serious all the time and you're adulting too much. So I said, pour them a shot of vodka, leave them a cupcake, invite them in, and stop being so serious all the time. Activity stopped like that.
Like that. Interesting.
Yeah.
I love that story. That really makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And it makes sense in terms of how I express and how I manifest. Like underneath you, someday I'll take a picture of it. I have a whole bunch of weird little crystally things, like all jumbled together on chains, hanging. Like, and that is food for a fairy, right? And like trinkets and gifts and magic are huge. Like it's profoundly real.
Yeah. That was my first interaction. Was I left, it was like an ear cuff earring with like the rhinestones in it. I left that and like a couple of coins. That's all I had that was shiny. And I left like, I don't know, some sort of little cake or something like that. The cake was gone, the money was still there, and the earring was gone. I was like,
what do you like? Yeah, right? Like it's the way of it. It's really encouraging me to get back into that kind of energy, actually. So perhaps that's why I wanted to ask you things.
Super cool.
Super cool.
Super cool. Elementals are my jam.
Are they? Of course they are, right? I love. Yeah.
Elves and fairies.
There's interesting too, like what's coming to mind now, that the rumor is that if you leave a little thimble or bottle cap of milk or something, that I think that's old school, and I feel like that's kind of maybe true. Ginger ale would be better because there's an effervescence to a ginger ale.
Yeah.
And that I think milk was just, it
was what they had.
Or it's easy, or it's something about that. But anything that has a little more I wonder.
I like to have a good time. So what kind of snacks say good time to you?
Yeah, exactly. Right? And it makes sense that some people don't resonate with that kind of delight, and so they may not have access to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor guys.
To each their own.
Yeah.
You're
missing
some
out.
Some people are gnome people,
There's a couple of gnomes, Jesse, and what was the guy's name? Oh, I can't remember his name. Jesse was the girl. She was the female gnome. But there was a male, and I can't remember his name. Didn't have a conversation, just feelings, just trading feelings back and forth. So yeah.
A little bit more thick, slow moving.
Earthy. Yes. They don't hurry. Yeah. They don't hurry. There's no hurrying. There's no running.
Nope.
We don't do that.
Nope.
Yeah.
Somebody had said to me once that, and it seems true to me, that, and this harkens back to our conversation about Elohim and dragons, that the elemental realms are a combination of 3, but not more than 3 elements that make up who they are, whereas humans are every element in greater percentages or less. So I'm wondering if that's true for elves too, and it just typically, and fairies typically.
Yeah, that
seems true, that to be manifest, you need all 4 or 5 elements to be true for you.
Yeah. And if they were manifest at one time, or were they not manifest and we just had a different ability to interact with them? Like, it's just the questions keep on coming in. It's fascinating.
It really is, isn't it? All right. Well, I think that's all I have on for now. For now, to be continued. Conversations in the Woo with Rachel.
Delightful.
Love it.
Delightful.
Delight.
Thank you,
Right.
my friend.
You are welcome. Thank
So
you.
amazing.
My
Love it.
beloved. Yes.
So great.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody who showed up to listen to us yammer.